Hey, it's Charles with Anderson Custom Woodcraft, and today I'm going to be making a lovely chessboard. I really wanted this project to be the best chessboard I can make. I always strive to make a great product, obviously, but this chessboard was a really special purpose for me. After selecting both Wenge and maple for this board, I needed to cut them to a rough width so that way I could cut them down to size on the miter saw. I really like to understand the workings of someone's shop, where their table saw is and their band saw, where their planer is. And the reason is I'm in a basement shop and I don't have a lot of space, so if you're liking these more environmental shots, please let me know in the comments below and I will certainly keep up the effort in doing them. I ended up nailing a stop lock to my miter station. It did end up working pretty well. Obviously there wasn't any movement. I don't know if I would do it again, but it definitely worked in this case. Since these are shorter, any bows or cups or twists in them are a lot more manageable, so I cleaned them up again at the table saw. If you buy rough lumber, you know 4/4 here isn't 4/4 there. So all I'm doing is resawing these on 2 passes down to the same width as the maple. You really want to do this type of operation on the table saw in 2 passes. It's because it gives you a little bit more control when your saw isn't bogging down in the middle of your cut. I also believe I get a much nicer finish if I do it this way. If I just do it in 1 pass, I get a lot of teeth marks. I ended up keeping all these offcuts. They're all pretty uniform, around a 1/16 of an inch, and I think it'll make an interesting panel. I would either use it for a veneer or on a blade of a table tennis paddle. As we all do in preparation for this project, I watched a lot of chessboard videos and I found one that I really liked the look of that had a chamfer on each of the squares. Once you have the height of the router bit set, you don't want to mess with it because you will have to do this in a later step. And if you mess with the height of the router bit, that will mess how deep your chamfer is, so you won't have an even chamfer on every square.
That we'll have to jack the car up to get to.
What?
I think there's bolts on the bottom of the intake.
After a brief interruption to help my fiance work on my car, it was time to put in the glue channels. I had never done a groove like this before, but I still don't know why I turned it up on end. I was thinking I was just getting an idea for how high it would be, but clearly that has no implications. That groove was a little too big, so I cut them on all the maple strips, and then the Wenge strips a little bit smaller than that. From left to right, you can see the progression. That is an untouched maple, the first maple, and the finished maple and Wenge. After this, I knew I had all of my rough material I would need, so I put the Wenge and maple away and cleaned up a little bit. I used hardboard underneath my clamps because it kind of has laminate top and it protects my cast iron tops on my table saw. Just when everything is going smoothly, this happens. It was a $500 camera when I bought it, and on Amazon it still is $500, so my heart dropped a little bit. I actually used this opportunity to reattach the mic with CA glue instead of hot glue, and it's been holding up pretty well. This $20 tripod did me dirty, but luckily everything was alright. Usually my preferred method for applying wood glue is a silicone roller that I put on the top of this bottle. However, this requires a lot of precision not to get any glue on the top piece, so all the glue gets stuck in the channel. I decided to use this silicone brush instead, and it worked out pretty well. At this point I was thinking I was a little short on wood, so I used the ruler there to make sure the ends were all even. I then used it on top. Foolishly, I didn't add a bottom caul, so it did end up having a very slight bow. After about 30 minutes, I scraped off all the glue and then thought it was dry enough, and I ripped them down to size. The checkerboard pattern is created by switching every other row, and that creates the alternating pattern. This was supposed to be a cool time lapse, but my camera died, so thumbs up. Just like before, after I cut the chamfer, I cut the glue groove. A quick hand sanding guarantees that the corners will be flush inside, and here's a little sneak peek. The glue up is very similar to before, however I added cauls on both the clamp sides and the vertical sides. Some of the pieces were beginning to bow up, so I really wanted to make sure that this board ended up flat, and I didn't want to support it underneath with any plywood. I am definitely pleased with the outcome, however I am not sure I would do it like this again. I do believe I would laminate this chest pattern onto plywood instead of going to all this trouble. This time I let the glue dry overnight. At this stage I couldn't afford any glue joint failures, so I really wanted to make sure the glue was set this time. I put packing tape on my cauls, and I really enjoyed how well they work, so I will definitely be doing this in the future on cutting boards. I needed to make sure that this was flat, however I do have some dried glue on my hardboard sheet, so I put it up on these cauls. It was warped, but more important than that, I found some delaminations in one of the glue joints. I went and found the last tube of CA glue I had. I promptly filled in the crack, and once I did that, I could get along with fixing the warp. I hope that in addition to laying out the environment of my shop, you can find some humor in me squeezing around all of these tight spaces. The way I fixed the warp in this board was to sand down the high spots, then do a total sand on the bottom. I then squared up all the edges on my crosscut sled and sanded them nice and smooth. With this angle, I really realized how effective my air filtration is. It is just lovely to see all of that dust getting sucked straight through the fan and into those filters. Now I turned my attention towards the base. I found what I thought at the time were 3 pieces of Padauk, but it was actually 2 pieces of Padauk and a piece of Leadwood. I did realize my mistake, however I thought that after the Padauk aged to a nice orange brown, it would actually complement the redwood quite nicely, so I decided to keep this. I'm using my flat top ripping blade here to actually cut a groove in the bloodwood, and that will channel the chessboard quite nicely. I actually prefer making non-through cuts on the table saw. My dust collection does a fantastic job of sucking the majority of the sawdust down and into the filter bag. Here I am testing the fit of the chessboard. It sits a little too low, so I'm going to take a little bit of the bloodwood off of the top. While my fence is set to the perfect setting, I will also cut down this Padauk. I actually found a very important use for this offcut, but you're going to have to watch a later video in order to find out how this was useful to me. I thought the bloodwood legs were a little too blocky for me, so I decided to cut a bevel. I think it's about 22 degrees, but I just eyeballed it with this cut here, and then I transferred this angle over to the legs. The offcut from these beveled cuts actually came back and hit me with quite a bit of force. I'm not sure why that happened. If you do know, please let me know in the comments below, as it was very unpleasant. After cutting the Padauk to length, I was ready to glue things up. I am going to be using a combination of Titebond Quick, Titebond 3, and CA glue. This will give me the benefit of strength from the Titebond 3, the benefit of quickness from the CA glue to hold everything in place, and a little bit faster set from the Titebond Quick. If I do end up doing this again, I would most likely not use the Titebond 3. I would just stick to the Quick and Thick and the CA glue. However, I did not want any lessons from this project. I thought I was going to let the glue dry, but alas, I was impatient and I sanded the Padauk to match the redwood. I filled any gaps with CA glue and sanded them over so any sawdust would fill those gaps, and it was ready for the maker's mark. I decided to go with a wipe on paste wax for the finish. However, if I could do it again, I would probably go with either Rubio Monocoat or a polyurethane product. I put the piece in the oven for about half an hour to make sure all the wax melted in, and that really helped the finish come out. As always, I appreciate your time and any comments you would like to leave me below. Thank you very much.